Hi, I'm 30F, and I just had the most disappointing birthday ever. I've been with my boyfriend, Dave 32M, for 4 years, and we've been living together for 2. Things have been good for the most part, at least. That's what I thought. We split bills, we both work, and we've gotten into this routine that works for us. I'm the planner, always organizing our weekends and trips, but I've never really minded it. However, this year, I was really looking forward to my 30th birthday. You know, milestone birthday and all. For weeks, I had been dropping hints to Dave about wanting to keep it low-key but still special. A nice dinner, maybe a small gathering with friends, something that would show he cared. I even mentioned it to him while we were watching TV one night, something like, hey, I'm so excited about turning 30. It'd be nice to do something small, just us and maybe a few friends. He nodded, didn't say much, but I figured he got the message. Now, the week leading up to my birthday was insane at work. I had deadlines piling up, but I made sure to take the actual day off to unwind. Throughout that week, I threw in a few casual reminders like, can't believe my birthday is in just a few days. Dave didn't really respond, but I chalked it up to him being busy with his own work. He had been distant lately, but I just assumed it was the usual stress. Still, I was expecting him to plan something, anything. The day before my birthday, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that maybe he'd forgotten. I mean, he hadn't mentioned it even once that week. So I decided to remind him, just in case. I kept it light, saying something like, wow, tomorrow's the big day. And all he said was, yeah, I've been too busy to think about birthdays right now. I didn't know how to react. I thought maybe he was just playing it cool and had something planned, but his tone didn't exactly fill me with confidence. Then came the morning of my birthday. I woke up early, feeling all excited. I was expecting something, maybe breakfast in bed, or even just a simple happy birthday. But Dave got out of bed, like it was any other day, grabbed his phone, and started getting ready for work. Not a single word about my birthday. I sat there, thinking maybe he was planning something for later in the day. I mean, surely he couldn't have forgotten, right? But as the hours passed, nothing happened. No texts, no calls. By noon, I was sitting in the living room, staring at my phone, waiting for anything from him. By 3 p.m., I was devastated. I tried telling myself he'd make up for it when he got home, maybe a surprise dinner or something. But deep down, I knew that wasn't happening. Feeling completely ignored, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went out for lunch by myself, trying to shake off the disappointment. After lunch, I stopped by a bakery and picked up a small cake. Nothing fancy, just something to make myself feel a little better. When I got home, I set the cake on the counter, hoping that Dave would at least acknowledge it when he got back. But no, Dave walked through the door late that evening, acting like it was any other day. He didn't mention my birthday. He didn't even notice the cake. At this point, I was visibly upset, but he didn't pick up on any of it. I tried hinting again, mentioning how quiet my day had been, but all he said was, we can celebrate later. Let's not make a big deal out of it. That was it for me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told him how hurt I was, how I had been looking forward to this day, and how disappointed I felt that he hadn't even tried to make it special. His response? I had a busy day. I forgot. It's not like I did it on purpose. No apology, no empathy, just pure defensiveness. Then, in what felt like a last-minute attempt to smooth things over, he offered to order takeout as an apology. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through the options like it was a routine Tuesday night, and asked if I wanted Thai or pizza. I just stood there, not even knowing how to respond. I was torn between wanting to forgive him and feeling completely let down. In the end, we ordered takeout, but the night was awkward and silent. I ate my food, stared at the uneaten cake on the counter, and realized that this was how my 30th birthday was going to end. Dave didn't make any further effort to make things right, and I didn't have the energy to bring it up again. The next day, things took a weird turn. Dave started acting mysterious, texting on his phone more than usual, running errands without saying where he was going. I started to wonder if maybe he was planning a belated surprise, trying to make up for how things went the day before. But that evening, when I got home from work, I walked into our apartment to find it decorated with balloons and streamers. For a second, I thought maybe he'd planned something after all, until he turned to me with a huge grin and announced that he was throwing a party for himself. Apparently, he had gotten a promotion at work, and this was his way of celebrating. I couldn't believe it. He completely forgot my birthday, but had the energy to throw a party for his promotion the very next day. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my birthday anymore. Update 1. So, the day after my birthday, I came home from work to find our place filled with balloons, streamers, and a banner that said, "Congrats on the promotion." I just stood there, staring at it all. Dave was running around, setting up snacks and getting ready for his big party. It was like the night before, my birthday never even happened. He greeted me with this huge smile, so excited about his promotion, and asked if I could help him finish getting things ready. I didn't say much. What could I say? People started arriving pretty quickly. Friends, coworkers, people I barely knew. I was still trying to process everything, but somehow I ended up playing hostess. I was grabbing drinks, setting out food, making small talk. Inside, though, I was boiling. It wasn't just that he had completely ignored my birthday, it was how quickly he had moved on to celebrating his own success. And the worst part? No one at that party knew what had happened the day before. No one knew that it was my birthday that he had forgotten. As the party went on, Dave was in his element. He was overly cheerful, practically glowing with all the attention he was getting. People kept toasting to his success, congratulating him. Every single toast felt like a slap in the face. I tried to smile and be polite, but it was getting harder with each passing hour. It became so clear to me that I was invisible in this moment. Everyone was here for him, and I felt like an afterthought. At one point, my best friend pulled me aside. She could tell something was off and asked me what was going on. I hadn't really planned on talking about it, but it all came pouring out. I told her how Dave had completely ignored my birthday, how he hadn't even mentioned it once, and how now he was throwing this big party for himself the day after. She looked at me, completely shocked. Her first instinct was to tell me to confront him again, but I didn't want to ruin the night for everyone else. I figured I'd wait until after the party, but honestly, my patience was wearing thin. The longer the night went on, the more frustrated I got. Every time someone would raise their glass to toast Dave's promotion, it felt like another punch to the gut. I was clearing up empty cups and plates while people cheered for him, and I couldn't stop thinking about all the other times he had let me down. Missed anniversaries, forgetting things I'd asked him to do, always putting his work or his friends before me. It all started to pile up in my mind, and I realized this wasn't just about my birthday. This was about a pattern of him always putting himself first. Near the end of the night, one of Dave's friends made a joke that just tipped me over the edge. He laughed and said, "Man, Dave, you're terrible with dates. Didn't you forget your own anniversary last year?" Everyone laughed, including Dave, and that was it for me. I couldn't stand it anymore. I excused myself, went straight to our bedroom, and locked the door behind me. I couldn't stop the tears at that point. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was furious. After the guests had left, Dave eventually came looking for me. He knocked on the door, sounding more confused than concerned. He asked why I was acting dramatic and what my problem was. That was the final straw. I opened the door and just let it all out. I told him how hurt I was that he had completely ignored my birthday, how I had waited all day for him to even acknowledge it, and how he made me feel unimportant. Instead of apologizing, he got defensive. He said it was just a birthday and that I was overreacting. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He acted like it wasn't a big deal, like I was the one in the wrong for being upset. He even flipped it around and accused me of trying to make his celebration about myself. That's when I knew this was bigger than just one birthday. This was about how he treated me all the time. For the next couple of days, we barely spoke to each other. I gave him the cold shoulder, refusing to engage unless it was absolutely necessary. I expected him to make some sort of effort to fix things, but he didn't. He seemed completely fine with the silent treatment, which only made things worse. I started questioning everything. Was this relationship really what I wanted? Did he even care about me the way I thought he did? I needed some perspective, so I turned to Reddit. I posted my story on it, just hoping for some validation or advice. I wasn't prepared for the overwhelming response. The comments came pouring in, and they were all saying the same thing. This wasn't okay. People were sharing their own stories of partners who were self-centered, and they were telling me that I deserved better. Reading those comments made me realize that this wasn't just about one bad day. This was a pattern, and I had been ignoring it for too long. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. I wondered if I was overreacting, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't. This was just the tipping point, but it had opened my eyes to so many other issues in our relationship. After reading through hundreds of comments, I started to realize that maybe I did deserve better. Maybe this wasn't the relationship I thought it was. That's when I made a decision. I needed space. I packed a small bag and told Dave I was going to stay with a friend for a few days to clear my head. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. Update 2. After I packed my things, I went straight to my best friend Lisa's place. She was waiting for me, knowing something was wrong as soon as I called. I didn't have to say much when I arrived. She just opened the door and gave me a hug, and I crashed on her couch with my small bag, feeling completely drained. The plan was to stay for a few days just to clear my head, but even as I unpacked, it already felt like this temporary move could last longer. I couldn't stop replaying the past few days in my head. It wasn't just about the birthday anymore. I kept thinking about all the other times Dave had been thoughtless. Missed anniversaries, plans that he forgot about, little things I had asked him to do that always slipped his mind. And I'd always made excuses for him, telling myself he was just busy or stressed. But now it was like all of those moments were flashing back to me, one after the other, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. It was overwhelming. Lisa could tell I was lost in my thoughts. So later that night, we had one of those long, late-night talks that only best friends can have. She didn't hold back, and I appreciated it. She pointed out what I had been avoiding. This wasn't just about Dave forgetting my birthday. It was a bigger issue, a symptom of how he consistently overlooked my needs. She asked me why I was always the one making compromises, and that hit hard. I hadn't even realized how much I'd been bending over backward just to make things work. At some point during that conversation, I pulled out my phone to check on my Reddit post. It had blown up. There were thousands of comments, way more than I ever expected. I started scrolling through them, and it was like looking into a mirror. So many people shared their own stories about being in relationships where they felt invisible, partners who were selfish, who didn't make an effort, and the advice was almost unanimous. People were telling me to seriously reconsider the relationship. Some even said that it sounded like Dave didn't value me at all. The silence from Dave was pretty telling too. For 2 days, I didn't hear a single word from him. No calls, no real attempt to check in. When he finally did text, the message was short and dismissive. He apologized, but in a way that didn't really feel like an apology. It was more like, I didn't mean to forget, but you know how I am. Let's just move on. He didn't seem to understand why I was upset, or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, it was frustrating. I realized he wasn't taking responsibility for what happened. He was just trying to smooth things over and avoid the conflict. Later that night, Lisa gave me some tough love. She said I deserved better, someone who wouldn't forget my birthday or brush off my feelings so easily. And she was right. Why was I putting up with someone who couldn't even show up for me in the smallest ways? It wasn't just about this one event. It was about a pattern of behavior that I had been ignoring for too long. As I lay in bed, scrolling through more Reddit comments, one of them really stood out. Someone wrote, "Is this how you want to feel on your birthday every year? If not, what are you waiting for?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if Dave would ever care enough to make an effort. That comment was a wake-up call. I started making a mental list of all the other times Dave had made me feel small or unimportant. Times when I had put in the effort and he hadn't. Times when I had gone out of my way to show him I cared. and he had done the bare minimum in return. Each memory felt like another piece of the puzzle, and it was all starting to make sense. This wasn't just about the birthday. The birthday was the final straw in a relationship that had been unbalanced for a long time. But even with all this clarity, the future felt uncertain. I didn't know if things could change. Could Dave ever step up? Could he ever be the kind of partner who actually cared about my needs? Or was this who he really was? I didn't have the answers, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. In the meantime, Dave's text didn't help. He reached out a few times, but his messages were lukewarm at best. There was no real urgency, no sign that he was actually sorry. It was more like he just wanted to smooth things over and move on without really addressing the problem. That only made me more frustrated. If he couldn't take this seriously, then what hope was there for the future? I updated my Reddit post with the latest developments, and the support kept coming. People were telling me that Dave's lack of real concern said everything about his priorities. It was comforting, but also a little sad to realize that so many people had been through similar situations. At this point, I knew something had to change. I couldn't stay at Lisa's place forever, but I also couldn't go back to the way things were. Something had to give. Either Dave would have to step up, or the relationship would have to end. After a long week of thinking and reflecting, I decided it was time to confront Dave. I couldn't put it off any longer. I needed to lay everything out, the birthday, the party, and all the times I had felt like an afterthought in our relationship. I didn't know how it would end, but I knew I couldn't keep going like this. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Update 3. After a few days of reflection at Lisa's, I knew it was time to face Dave. I couldn't keep putting it off, no matter how much I dreaded it. I headed back to the apartment, my stomach in knots the entire drive. When I walked in, I found him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, like everything was perfectly normal. The sight of him lounging there, completely unaware of the storm brewing, rubbed me the wrong way. He didn't even seem surprised to see me. Just a casual, "Hey, didn't know you were coming back today." That nonchalance hit me hard. I dropped my bag by the door and sat down across from him. The air was thick with tension, and neither of us said anything at first. Dave kept fidgeting with his phone, clearly uncomfortable, but not making any effort to break the silence. I could feel my frustration building, and I knew I couldn't let him brush this off. I started by bringing up my birthday, how it had hurt me when he didn't acknowledge it, and how the party the very next day made things worse. I didn't get far before he interrupted me. "It's not that big of a deal," he said, his tone dismissive. I said I was sorry, didn't I? That was it for me. That one line, dismissing my feelings like they didn't matter, made me see red. I didn't hold back after that. All of the anger and hurt that had been building up for months, maybe even years, came pouring out. I listed every time he had made me feel invisible. Missed anniversaries, forgotten plans, his refusal to put any effort into our relationship. The birthday incident was just the final straw in a long line of disappointments. I couldn't take it anymore. Dave didn't take it well. He immediately got defensive, blaming his busy work schedule and saying I was being overly sensitive. He even had the audacity to bring up his promotion again, as if that somehow justified everything. "You know how much I've had going on," he said, like that was supposed to make it all okay. As I kept talking though, something clicked. I realized just how exhausted I was, exhausted from always being the one who cared more, the one who made the plans, the one who carried the emotional weight of the relationship. It wasn't just about Dave forgetting my birthday, it was about how I had been making excuses for him for years. I was tired, and I couldn't do it anymore. That's when I gave him an ultimatum. I told him things couldn't go on like this. Either he started putting in real, tangible effort, no more empty promises, no more "I'm busy" excuses, or we were done. I made it clear that I wasn't going to keep lowering my standards for him. He needed to step up, or there was no future for us. Dave looked completely shocked. He hadn't expected me to be this serious, and for the first time during the conversation, he was speechless. But then, like clockwork, he started backtracking, trying to smooth things over. He promised to do better, said he would plan more, would never forget anything important again. He said all the right things, but as I listened, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd heard it all before. I stood there, watching him make promises I wasn't sure he could keep. I wanted to believe him, but there was a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminding me of all the times he had said something similar. What was different this time? Why should I believe that this time would be any different? For a brief moment, I considered giving him another chance. Maybe this was the wake-up call he needed. Maybe things really would change if I just gave him the opportunity to prove it. But then I stopped. I took a deep breath and asked myself, do I really want to keep fighting for his attention? Do I want to spend the rest of my life reminding him of my worth? The answer hit me like a ton of bricks. Even as Dave continued talking, making more promises, I could see that his attitude hadn't changed. He still didn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. His words sounded good, but his nonchalant demeanor told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't taking this seriously, and I couldn't ignore that anymore. After hours of going back and forth, I came to a decision. I told him that I needed time apart to think about everything. I couldn't make any decisions right then and there, but I wasn't convinced that things would change. He seemed taken aback, but there wasn't much he could say. I think he knew, deep down, that this was more serious than he had realized. I grabbed a few more of my things, packed them into a bag, and headed back to Lisa's place. I felt emotionally drained, but at the same time, clearer than I had in a long time. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I was making a decision for myself. I wasn't waiting for Dave to change, I was taking control of what happened next. Whatever the future held, whether Dave would step up, or whether I would move on without him, I knew one thing for sure, it would be on my terms. Update 4. Back at Lisa's place, I felt like I was caught in a weird mix of relief and fear. The relief came from stepping away from the situation, getting some space to think. But fear crept in as well. Fear that maybe this was the beginning of the end. There was no going back to the way things were, that much I knew. I'd made the decision to take a break from Dave, but the weight of what that meant was only just sinking in. For the first few days, it was total radio silence. Neither of us reached out. I wasn't ready, and clearly neither was he. I kept checking my phone out of habit, half expecting some grand gesture from him, some sign that he was desperate to fix things. But nothing came. I couldn't help but wonder if this was how it was going to end, in silence. Part of me still had love for him, but another part of me knew something fundamental had cracked in our relationship. I wasn't sure it could be mended. During those first days, I turned to Reddit again. My earlier posts had gained so much traction, and it was comforting to read the comments. People shared their own stories, talked about similar situations they'd been through. It was like a massive support group, and it made me feel less alone. Some of the advice really stuck with me. Take the time you need, don't rush back, and most importantly, don't settle for less than you deserve. But I was trying to take all of that to heart, but it wasn't easy. Lisa and a few other close friends noticed the change in me almost immediately. We all got together one night, and they sat me down for a serious talk. They pointed out how much lighter I seemed, even though it had only been a week since I left the apartment. Lisa, in particular, was blunt. She told me I needed to start putting myself first, that this break was a chance for me to really figure out what I wanted, whether that included Dave or not. They weren't wrong. I had felt a weight lift since stepping away, but the thought of ending things for good still terrified me. A week passed before Dave finally reached out. He sent a long message saying he missed me and that he had been reflecting on everything. He wanted to talk and insisted he was willing to change. Reading his words, though, I couldn't shake the feeling of skepticism. I'd heard similar things from him before, and his actions never seemed to line up with his promises. I showed Lisa the message, and her immediate response was, "He's just saying what he thinks you want to hear." I didn't want to be cynical, but part of me knew she was right. His message sounded nice, but where was the accountability? Where was the acknowledgement of what had happened and how we got here? Still, I couldn't deny that I was curious. A small part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to think that maybe this time was different. Then he threw me a curveball. He suggested we go to couples counseling. Dave, who had always dismissed the idea of therapy, suddenly wanted to try it. That definitely caught me off guard. I didn't know what to make of it. Was this a genuine attempt to fix things, or was he just trying to hold on to the relationship without really addressing the core issues? I mulled it over for days, not sure how to feel about it. I did what I always do. I updated my Reddit post with the latest development and asked for advice. The responses were mixed. Some people thought therapy could be a good idea, a chance to really dig into the issues. But others warned me not to fall into the trap of giving him yet another chance if he wasn't fully committed to change. One comment really stuck out to me. Therapy only works if both people are willing to put in the effort. Don't let him drag you through more of the same. For the next few days, I kept going back and forth in my head. Therapy might help, sure, but was our relationship too far gone to save? Was I holding on to something just because it was familiar, or was there still something worth saving? Every time I thought I had an answer, a wave of doubt would hit me. Meanwhile, Dave's behavior shifted. He started texting and calling more frequently, telling me he couldn't imagine his life without me, and that he'd do anything to make it work. But despite all the sweet words, something still felt off. There was no real acknowledgement of the birthday incident, no real understanding of why I was hurt. He kept saying he'd do better, but it felt like he was just trying to paper over the cracks without fixing the foundation. I wanted to believe in the possibility of change, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't keep asking him to care the way I needed. It wasn't sustainable, and the thought of going back to that exhausting dynamic was starting to weigh on me. After a few more days of reflection, I made a decision. I needed to meet Dave in person for one final conversation. This would be the talk that decided whether we were going to try therapy or if we were done for good. I didn't want to drag things out any longer. We met at a park we used to go to when we first started dating. The tension was thick as soon as I saw him. We sat down on a bench, and before he could start with his apologies, I laid it all out. The birthday, the years of feeling like an afterthought, the lack of effort. I told him that words weren't enough anymore. I needed real, tangible action. And even then, I wasn't sure if it wasn't too late. Dave looked taken aback. He promised to start planning more, to never forget another important date, and he insisted counseling would help. But as he spoke, I realized something. He still wasn't taking responsibility for the past. He was just trying to smooth things over in the present. That was the moment I knew. No matter how much he promised to change, something fundamental was missing, and I couldn't wait around for him to figure it out anymore. Update 5. After the confrontation with Dave, I went back to Lisa's place feeling completely drained. I replayed the entire conversation in my mind, trying to make sense of it. He had said all the right things. Promises to change, to do better, to never forget anything important again. But something about it still felt off. His words didn't match the weight of what had been building up for years. It felt like he was focused on saying whatever he thought would keep me around, rather than truly understanding what needed to change. Later that night, Lisa and a couple of our close friends came over. They could tell I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. We talked everything through again, and they reminded me of something important. I shouldn't have to teach someone how to care about me. They pointed out that in a healthy relationship, effort and care should come naturally, not because I'm constantly reminding my partner to do the basics. Their words started to settle into my mind, and the doubts I had about giving Dave another chance began to solidify into something clearer. Meanwhile, my latest Reddit post blew up again. Thousands of comments came flooding in, offering support and encouragement. People shared their own experiences, telling me they had been in similar situations and that they wished they had walked away sooner. The overwhelming message was the same: focus on yourself. Don't let his empty promises sway you. Reading those comments felt like the final push I needed to really start thinking about what was best for me. Even though I was leaning toward ending things, there was still a part of me that wondered if I should give therapy a try. We had been together for years, and it felt like walking away without exhausting every option might leave me with regrets. But deep down, I knew that I shouldn't be the only one carrying the emotional labor. It wasn't just about fixing things, it was about recognizing that I had been holding the relationship together for too long without enough effort from him. Over the next few days, Dave's messages became more frequent and more erratic. At first, they were apologetic and full of promises to change, but then he started guilt-tripping me. He'd say things like, if you loved me, you'd give me another chance, and you're just throwing us away. The tone of his messages shifted from regretful to manipulative, and that only solidified my decision. He wasn't genuinely trying to fix things, he was trying to control the situation. One night, while scrolling through the comments on Reddit, I stumbled upon one that hit me harder than the rest. The fact that you're constantly having to ask for basic decency means this isn't the right relationship. Love isn't supposed to feel like begging. That one comment flipped a switch in me. I realized that I had been holding on to a version of Dave that didn't exist anymore, if it ever did. I had been waiting for him to change, but in reality, I had changed. I was done lowering my standards and hoping for the bare minimum. The next morning, I sent Dave a long message. I laid it all out, explaining that while I'd always care about him, I couldn't keep being in a relationship that drained me emotionally. I told him that I wouldn't be pursuing therapy or reconciliation. I made it clear that this was the end. His response came quickly. He was defensive, accusing me of being selfish and saying things like, "You're giving up too easily," and "I can't believe you're doing this after everything we've been through." But surprisingly, I didn't feel shaken by his words. Instead, I felt calm, confident even. For the first time in a long time, I knew that I was making the right decision for myself. I arranged a time to go back to the apartment and collect my things. Lisa and 2 other friends came with me for support. When we got there, Dave wasn't home, which made the whole process easier. I packed up my belongings without the emotional tension of seeing him, and we left without any drama. Walking out of that apartment with my things, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. It was painful, sure, but I knew that it was the best decision for me. There was no doubt lingering in my mind anymore. That night, I posted my final update on Reddit, thanking everyone for their advice and support. I shared that I had officially ended things with Dave and that I was focusing on my own healing and happiness. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People congratulated me for standing up for myself, and the outpouring of support was incredible. Over the next few weeks, I focused entirely on healing. I started seeing a therapist on my own, journaling, and reconnecting with friends I hadn't spent much time with during my relationship with Dave. Little by little, I started feeling more like myself again. The weight of the relationship, of always having to fight for attention and care, slowly lifted. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had lost until I started getting it back. It's still early days, but I feel hopeful for the future. I've learned so much about what I deserve and what I won't settle for anymore. I don't need to be in a relationship where I'm constantly fighting to be seen and heard. I'm ready for a fresh start, on my own terms this time. One afternoon, I was walking through the city, and for the first time in years, I felt free. This breakup wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. And for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely excited about what's next.